Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
Hello, it's the Maryland Crabs. We're back here, and this time on our latest field trip, we've gone to the James Senate office building, and we're talking with Senator John Astle, who we were initially going to talk about, and we did, but we were going to talk about the upcoming session, what was on his agenda and whatnot. But
it's kind of a tame session. There's no fireworks coming up really that I could see on the slate.
Right, and we're going to talk about the session. We're going to talk about his run for mayor, which is sort of not a very well kept, but kind of well kept, not announced secret.
Yeah, it was pretty open,
which has come to light now. So we're gonna.
He unlocked my phone. I forgot that I met Senator Astle like 5, 6, 7 years. No, you know what? It was longer than that. It was before the iPhone came out. So it was probably 10 years ago when we still had flip phones. Mm-hmm. And I was at an ABA meeting up at Harry Brown's, and he was upstairs where all the lobbyists and legislators hang out. And my phone was locked. I couldn't, I had an Ericsson phone, and I couldn't figure it out, how to get. And he picked up the phone because I was bitching about it, and he just hit 0000 and unlocked it. So I had this. I'm a tech junkie, and I had this senator from Maryland just pick up my
like
phone.
Your father's generation.
Exactly, and ran, and then he just slid it back because he was just tired of hearing me bitch about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this is the Maryland Crabs, and if you just stumbled on us, make sure that you follow us around on all sorts of social media. On Twitter, we are MD Crabs Podcast. You can go to our website, which is themarylandcrabs.com. You can email us at info@themarylandcrabs.com. Find us on Facebook, right?
Yep.
We got 2 Facebook thingies. The Maryland Crabs Podcast. We got a group and a page, just because we could.
Buying up all the properties.
Yeah.
And then you can follow John at Anne Annapolis on Twitter, and I'm at Tim Hamilton 47 on Twitter.
But yeah, this is proving to be an interesting political year. I mean, you've got the Governor Hogan, which we talked to a couple of weeks ago, has a couple things that he's forcing through. He's forcing through the minimum, the sick leave bill. He's got the boost, which is additional monies for the students in as far as grants for underperforming students. And then his big thing is the roadkill bill, where he wants to. He had a bill that was vetoed, and he's pushing it back through again to eliminate the need for highways too. So those are really the only contentious things, because Governor Hogan has had some incredible popularity.
Yeah, I don't even think that the medical leave is that contentious, because we'd said this before, it's a Democratic issue. He's just kind of picked up on it, so I don't think that's going to be a problem with that one.
I mean, we're not in an election year for the state. That's still 2 years away. So I think this session is going to be
It's fairly tame, I think.
Yeah, fairly tame. A lot of rubber stamping, a lot of, sort of backslapping. And I think you're going to see a lot of bipartisan cooperation, except for a few things that'll be strange. But we can talk to Senator Astle about that. And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen as we move on to the city election.
That's going to be the fun one.
And it's really interesting, because you got Gavin Buckley, who just had his official campaign announcement.
And his fundraiser, on Sunday night.
And that was very well attended. Looks like he has a very good show of support. I mean, he's had some good ideas. We spoke with Gavin. If you haven't heard Gavin, we spoke with him, last fall. So go back and take a listen to the Gavin Buckley. It's called Australians on the Barbie or something, something like that.
But you know what? I was thinking about this when we were talking about the mayoral election there, because there was an article in the Capitol about the three-way race right now. Well, it's not technically a three-way; it's just you have 3 candidates. But the senator and Gavin are both going to run as Democrats, so they have to clear the primary. But you look at the Ward 1, just kind of the womb of candidates. Is that when was the last time that we've had a mayoral candidate that hasn't come out of? I mean, even Moyer was 8, but that's close enough to downtown.
Right. But Josh was 8 and 2.
Right. So my concern when we look at the mayoral candidates is that there's such a focus on downtown, and it continues even when you and I talk about business, and we said this in one of our first couple episodes. When we talk about business, we're really talking about downtown business. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about Chinkapin. We're not talking about West Street or Outer West Street. We're not talking about Forest Drive. But I feel like a lot of these issues that that the candidates are bringing up, and I think that when we get closer to the election, and because right now that the campaigns are fairly vague when it comes to the issues, but they're still gonna come up as downtown issues, and that is one thing that does kind of concern me.
I disagree. I think it's going to change this election. I mean, we've got the Latino and the Hispanic population that is roaring. They're rearing their what's the word I'm looking for? Rearing their heads, but I mean they're going to be a very strong voice in this election.
Yeah, but for an election, but I mean I wonder.
Well, I think you're going to redefine the boundaries of the city figuratively. When you say Annapolis, as you said, it's like, okay, well, up Main Street, down Maryland Avenue, and you've got this nice little historic area all tied up in a little bow, which is where all the people come and buy their T-shirts and crab cakes. I think this election, you're going to see the populace, the constituents, redefine that boundary. I think you're going to see businesses and people out on Forest Drive. Certainly, you've got the people that are living in Hunt Meadow that are going to be sitting there saying, "No, wait a minute, you need to do something about Crystal Spring."
But I don't know. They've never done that before. That's my concern.
I think I sense a little bit of a different tenor.
I think if you go down Forest Drive, because you and I live off Forest Drive, so we go up and down. There are things that are tolerated on Forest Drive that are not tolerated, would never be tolerated in Ward 1. And there's crime issues in other parts of the city that would never be tolerated in Ward 1. So that's kind of where, I think that I would like, if I were, and I'm not a city resident, I live just outside, but if I'm a city resident who lives in Ward 7 or 5 or 2, I'd be stepping up going to the mayoral candidate saying, let's make some changes here. And when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about business. I really
think they are. I mean, you look at what is running here already. Okay, we've got Mayor Mike Pantelides, who's in office. We've got Senator John Astle that's running. We've got Gavin Buckley that's running in the mayor. But if you look at on the ward level, you've got Ellie Tierney, who's a business owner in Ward 1, is going to challenge Joe Budge. Also, obviously, they both live in Ward 1. Ward 2, I haven't heard of any challengers to Fred Payon yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Kurt Riegel come into this again. Mm-hmm. Ward 3, I'm hearing that Rhonda Pindell Charles is going to be challenged by former Alderwoman Classy Hoyle.
That's going to be a battle.
Which is very strange. Ward 4, I've not heard anything more, and that's Sheila Finlayson.
Yeah, I think she's pretty strong.
Ward 5, you've got Jared Littman, who's out, and the heir apparent is already in with Mark Rodriguez, who's somebody that we've also talked to, and that's got the voice in the ear of the Latino community as well. Okay, Ward 6, you've got a three-way race at this point. You've got Kenny Kirby, who has said he's going to run. He said he wasn't, and then he now has said that he is going to run, but he hasn't filed. But you've got Kenny Kirby, the sitting alderman. You've got Shamika Henson, who is an attorney out of Baltimore that lives in the ward. And now you've just got DeJuan Gay, who just filed.
He's 19, isn't he?
He's 19. He's a student at University of Maryland Eastern. Sure. 6, Ward 7, you've got Alexis Villegas, who has come in. We haven't heard from Ian Pfeiffer. He initially said he wasn't, but I think he was banking on an appointment in a Clinton administration. So he may indeed run there. And we've also heard that Rob Savage, who was the whistleblower in planning and zoning on that whole thing. Oh, yeah. He's now working on Crystal Spring. He's now working for the county, but I hear he's going to be also running as well. Ward 8, hopefully there's a challenger there, but I haven't heard of anybody at this point. But, you've got Ross Arnett. So I think you've got a lot of new blood all around these wards that are going to make a deal of it. I mean, DeJuan Gay has said, no, we need to look at the city more than just these specific areas. And I think you're going to find that that's going to be a big part of the election.
I would hope so, because I think part of the status quo up to this point, I think that's what's gotten stale, is that I just feel that we've centered so much on the issues downtown, and the fact that we haven't solved those issues, the fact that we've put so much time and effort into downtown issues, and yet have had catastrophes. Well, that's dramatic, but we've had debacles like the Market House, and I hate to bring that up again, but that is just emblematic of the issues we have, that we pour money into projects and they're never solved. I mean, Compromise Street is still an issue. I don't think we're moving forward with anything on Compromise Street after all the time and effort that was put into that.
Right. Well, in this election too, also, you've got to look at the business community. We've got some business entities that weren't around last time around. We've got SOFOS, South of Forest. I don't know what the acronym is, but the business community, which is basically Forest Drive corridor. they're active and they're strong. They're calling for cleaning up a Forest Drive, which I know has been a real bug up your ass.
Yeah, it has.
Years about just how disgustingly dirty it is. And I've walked that many times.
Well, not just that, but I mean, you have temporary, and pro-business, but I'm looking at some of the business with these temporary signs that are, falling apart and holes in them. And if you go up past, around the seafood market, I'm not talking about the seafood market, but a lot of the businesses up there, it's falling apart.
Sure. Over in the Chinkapin Round Road, you've got the design and I can't remember, design in something district.
Warehouse district. Yeah.
They're doing events. They're doing, and they're starting to get a voice out there. And this is sort of a fraction. And then you've got the Downtown Annapolis Partnership, which focuses strictly on the downtown area with accepting some of the other places to come in. And that would be ACC, not EXC, accepting. Well, so I think it's really going to be, redefined in this election as we go forward.
I'd hope so. I think, because there's a lot of issues that, crime is one that's on a lot of people's minds right now. I think that the election is going to be really interesting with the new voices you have coming in. And you have someone that give a fresh business voice like Gavin, and you have Senator Astle, who is battle-hardened. He's
the establishment. Which I wonder whether that will hurt him.
Well, yeah, but there's a fine line between establishment as someone who is entrenched and is just kind of occupying a seat and somebody who understands how deals are made. And it'll be interesting to see how Senator positions himself.
Well, he certainly has a different perspective coming from the state level down.
Right. Yeah. I often wonder if it just seems easier at that point. But I mean, he can be hyper focused really at this point on Annapolis and build coalition with the council, which, let's be honest, is not being done now.
Sure.
And I'm not blaming anybody. It could be part of council, part of the mayor. There are issues, but there is an issue there. So
right. Well, it'll be interesting. I'll tell you. Well, why don't we get to it and talk to Senator Astle?
Let's get him in here.
Spring is here, and baseball season is here. Is your lawn ready for a game of catch or batting practice with the kids? Turn to the lawn and garden experts at Homestead Gardens and learn what products they recommend for a healthy green lawn. Homestead Gardens carries the widest selection of natural and organic garden solutions for a kid, pet, and environmentally safe lawn. Because lawns aren't just for looking at, they're for playing in. Visit homesteadgardens.com for weekly deals, inspiration, and more. Live life outdoors this season with Homestead Gardens, Davidsonville, and Severna Park.
If you don't like huge draft beer selections, don't go to Union Jack's. If you're not looking for an incredible menu and dozens of screens to catch your favorite teams, I repeat, do not go to Union Jack's. Not into darts and pool? Good. Live music not your thing? Perfect. Bottom line, if you are not interested in the best dining and bar experience in Annapolis, avoid Union Jack's. But if this all sounds totally friggin' awesome to you, visit Union Jack's in Annapolis, just across from Whole Foods in the Annapolis Town Center. Union Jack's, not your old-style pub.
Well, we're back here, and we're fortunate enough to be talking to Senator John Astle, who has been in the state legislature for 34 years? 35 years. You got it corrected. He's came into the House of Delegates back in 1983, and he's currently serving as the state senator for District 30, which covers is it all Anne Arundel County?
No, I've got City of Annapolis, a little piece of the Broad Neck across the Naval Academy Bridge.
That funny zip code.
Yeah.
That funny zip code that's right over there.
And then I go South County all the way to Calvert County.
Okay.
So geographically, it's a larger district. But remember, they're done by population. And
right.
So that's a more sparsely populated area down there. So it's larger, but...
Right. Well, I was reading a little bit about you. I mean, you're West Virginia. Were you rooting for Maryland or Marshall in the Military Bowl a couple of years ago?
Marshall. That's my school. Ironically, my parents are both from Maryland.
Okay.
And they met while they were students at the University of Maryland. They graduated in, I think it was 1937, and got married. And my father took a job in West Virginia. And by virtue of his employment, I was born, raised, and educated in West Virginia.
Well, how did you get to Annapolis?
My senior year, a good friend of mine, a guy named Gene Cox, I don't know you, he eventually got into broadcasting and was the anchorman for a TV station in Richmond. But Gene was teaching. He'd graduated in June of 65, and so this was September of 65, and he called me one evening and he said, "John, you got to get over here. There are more women in this town than I've ever seen in my life." And at that point, I was age competitive with the midshipmen, so I came over. And he was right, and that's where I discovered Annapolis. And then eventually, I was just back from Viet Nam, and I met my wife in a bar
Here?
in Annapolis. Yep, she's a native.
What bar?
It's gone now. It was called the Red Coach. It was over on King George Street.
Okay.
So, but she graduated from Annapolis High, and she graduated from Towson, and she was teaching school here in Anne Arundel County, and taught until, 45 years, I think, altogether, before she finally said, I'm done. I'm going to retire. And then we raised 2 boys on Fleet Street, one of whom went to the Naval Academy.
Right, now the Red Coach, was that the bar? Now, I heard that you were first talked into running for mayor back in 1981.
Yeah, no, that was at Harry Brown's where that occurred. Yeah,
I'm sensing a theme here that all these life decisions come out of a bar.
Well, they say that's where you get smarter
and better looking.
That's true.
But the decision to marry Jane was we're working on 46 years together, so it's worked out.
Right, absolutely.
Then my youngest son went to Clemson and unfortunately was killed in an automobile accident right after he graduated. So we lost him.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to deal with.
It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with in my entire life.
I don't think you ever get over that.
I don't think you do. Yeah, it's been almost 20 years now, and it's still a painful memory.
Well, I mean, it's somewhat unusual. I mean, your life seems to have come full circle. You came into Annapolis, you got into the legislature, or you toyed with the idea of running with mayor. You got into the legislature. You've had
I actually ran that first year.
Right. You ran for mayor,
and I lost by 243 votes to Dick Hillman.
Okay.
You still know the number exactly?
Oh, absolutely.
That's a number you never forget.
But you know what? In hindsight, it was the best thing because the following year I ran for the legislature, and now I'm in my 35th session. So had I won that election, then one term, maybe 2, and then I wouldn't be wearing a colonial costume and walking dogs, but
you might be, but
I might be, but
the cops might be coming to get you.
I might have done something else.
Well, yeah, you definitely always remember the numbers. I mean, you tell me Mike Pantelides is not going to remember 59 for the rest of his life. His life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
and Josh.
Yeah,
and Josh too. Yeah.
That's as well. But I mean, it's funny that your life has somewhat come full circle. Now here we are after a storied career in the House of Delegates in the State Senate. That you're in.
I had another career before I got in the legislature.
I know you were flying helicopters.
I was a Marine officer.
Right.
Flew helicopters. Flew in Viet Nam, and the highlight of my Marine Corps career was 4 years as a pilot for President Nixon, flying Marine One.
Were you really?
Awesome.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When was the last time you flew?
We were flying medevacs, right? After that.
After that, yeah. Well, I flew for 6 years for the Baltimore City Police Department, and then after I got elected, I had to leave the police department, and I got a job with MedStar flying medevac, and I did that until I turned 65. Now, the FAA has rules.
Oh, right. So I heard McMillan's out there. He's counting his...
Yeah, till he hits 65, and then he'll rake in that retirement.
How was flying the presidential helicopter?
It was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Although when you're up front, the most important people in the helicopter are in the 2 seats up in the cockpit.
Right.
But, once you take off, you got a lot of stuff to pay attention to in the cockpit. You don't have time to think about what's going on in the back.
Right.
But just to know, I sat on the side of the helicopter where the stairs were, and so I could look and watch as the president got on board. It's the first family got on board, and so. And
wow, it
was pretty neat to think that you were being entrusted with the safety of the president of the United States.
The life of the leader of a free world, if you want to.
How long was your tour in Vietnam?
13 months.
Mm-hmm. Was that something that seminal time in your life? I mean,
I learned a lot about life and death, and I get shot down twice, and I got 2 Purple Hearts. So, I mean, there were some moments when I wasn't sure what was going to happen in the next 10 minutes.
Wow, for my generation, my father was drafted, and he didn't go over, but it was I was really young. I remember picking him up, after he was released. And for my generation, you see all the movies and it was more kind of glorified. It was very idealized. And you forget that there's a lot of baggage that goes along with that lasts forever. And the military service just defines a lot of people in the course of actions they take kind of moving forward.
I think you're absolutely correct. And I keep one of my Purple Hearts in the presentation case on my desk right next to my computer. I see it every morning when I turn on the computer. And it reminds me that there are some important things that we do here, but there are a lot of things that aren't. And so it's really helped me keep my perspective as I've looked at various issues.
Well, it's strange to me. It's something that our generation doesn't have. I mean, I wasn't of the age when we were at war or anything like that. My father served in World War II in the Pacific, and he's just really just now at 92 coming to terms with sort of talking about it. I mean, it was always like, yeah, I was in the Marines, I enlisted and came back and went to school on GI Bill, and that was just sort of where it ended. But now he's coming to terms and being able to do it. So I mean, there's just so much that's there.
I guess it's been 3 years ago now. I put in a piece of legislation which designated March 30th as Welcome Home Viet Nam Veterans Day. Once I introduced the bill, every other member of the Senate wanted to get on it. And then the House said, well, we want our bill. So there was one introduced in the House, and every single member of the House got on it. And then it was passed. The governor signed it into law on March 30th. And that year we had an event at the Lowe's Hotel, and we had 400 or 500 people. Last year, we were up by the airport. We had over 800 people. They finally had to close the door. There wasn't room. Wow. And now this year we're going to go to that I forget what it's called, that place in Greenbelt where they have events.
All right.
Whatever that place is.
But for your generation, it was such a defining thing. It was, and I think what John's point is that we don't really have that defining. I mean, the Gulf War, the first Gulf War.
It's history. I mean, my children are going to recognize 9/11 as ancient history.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even the previous generation was World War II, and then for the baby boomers it was Vietnam, and for Gen X and what there's really there's nothing. There's no definitive sort of.
Is that probably one of the bills that you've sponsored that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I am.
Is that because unequivocally, or
what it's done is begin to promote healing? Now, you talked about your father's at 92 is just beginning to open up. What we discovered in that first event was there were guys that came that had never talked about Vietnam to their families. Some of them came with family members, and then we heard people saying, "Wow, my father's now starting to talk," because these guys were talking with each other while we were there at that event. And I was watching something the other day about post-traumatic stress disorder and the problems it's causing. And I asked my wife, how did I survive that? Why did I not suffer from that? And her opinion was...
You didn't. You went into politics.
But I spent 5 years after I came back from Vietnam on active duty in the Marines. Mm-hmm. And I was working every day with guys that I'd served with in Vietnam. And we told those stories over...
So it's cathartic.
And over again. And I think we worked it through. We came back to Earth during that 5 years. And so.
Whereas someone coming out of the service and they go right back into civilian life.
Yeah, that's tough.
There's no decompression.
You were in the reserve, Marine Reserves.
After I did 10 years and then I got out and I stayed active in the reserves and I retired as a full colonel after 30 years.
That's amazing. Now you enlisted in the Marines, correct?
I did, and initially I enlisted right out of high school in the reserves.
Okay.
And I went to Parris Island and Camp Lejeune, then I came home. I have to tell you a story. I love stories.
Stories are great.
We're podcasters. This works out well then.
I'd been back 4 months in the reserves, back in Huntington. I'd gotten into school at Marshall. Mm-hmm. And all the other privates that I'd come back with had been promoted to private first class, and I was still a private. So one drill weekend, I got my courage up to go see the first sergeant. I rapped on the door. He didn't even look up from his desk. He said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, First Sergeant Private's been back from boot camp now for 4 months, and all the other privates." And he just cut me right off, and he says, "'Cause you got an attitude. Now get out of my sight." Well, I never forgot that. And the day the general pinned the eagles on my collar, I had an epiphany, and I suddenly realized I'd had the right attitude since the very beginning. I just had the wrong pay grade.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. But your Vietnam, that is one of the most poignant bills for you.
Yeah.
This is arguably could be your final term in the state Senate.
If I'm successful.
Right.
Yep.
What's on Senator Astle's agenda for the next 83 days? Yeah,
I don't count the days. I just wake up every morning, look in the mirror, and think, I look good.
Yes, I made it.
Another day. I had a couple of issues that I'm working on, and I've put in a couple of bills. One, in fact, it'll be on third reader, maybe tonight. Several years ago, the chairman and I'm on the finance committee, and we have jurisdiction over tourism issues. I'd been approached by what they call the DMOs, the Destination Marketing Organizations. Each county has one, and their responsibility is to try to market that county to the world.
We've got Visit Annapolis and Troy Talbot.
Yeah. And so they would come to the Maryland Tourism Development Board meetings, but they were in the audience. And they said, we'd really like to be on the, have a vote and be on and actually sit with the board. So we put in a bill, which put them three of them on the board. But there was some discussion, and to get the bill passed, we amended it so they did not have a vote. They were on the board. They sat at the table during the meetings, but they didn't have a vote. And the chairman and I decided this year that it's time. They need to fully participate in the actions of the Tourism Development Board. And they are the experts because their organizations get some of this money, and then they use it.
Sure, they're on the front lines.
Yeah. So that bill passed out. I'll never forget the day we heard the bill, the first bill to put the three of them on. Chairman was gone, and I'm vice chairman, so I was chairing the committee. And the guy who was then the chairman of the Tourism Development Board was sitting at the witness table, and he says to me, "Well, Mr. Chairman, they're in the room. I don't think it makes any difference where they sit." And I said, "Well, sir, you and I are in the room. You're sitting there. I'm sitting here. I submit it makes a difference."
And there goes that right attitude and wrong pay grade again. One more time.
So it worked. The one bill I did, which really has benefited Maryland tourism, because I believe that tourism is really one of the big industries in Maryland.
Oh, it's huge.
And we need to promote Maryland. We have everything. We don't have to build infrastructure. It's here. We just have to market. McDonald's, I don't know how many billion the hamburgers they've sold, but they still market. And Burger King still markets. So Maryland has to market. So I put in a bill which requires at the end of each fiscal year the comptroller to measure business codes that relate to tourism, like hotel tax. And so he gets a pretty good picture of what it looks like in that industry. In the first year, and I forget, it was like 87, I think, was when I introduced it. But when it became effective, that was the baseline. And then it was measured every year after that, and anything over a 5% increase over that, the governor had the ability to take some of that overage and put it back into tourism marketing. And so it's made a difference, and we've really done some good things in promoting Maryland to the world.
How's Governor Hogan been? You guys are on opposite sides of the table, but that's sort of a blurry table. And
I'm pretty much a moderate. I'm not hewing to the extremes of either side. And while I don't, he and I don't converse, I think, he's doing an incredible job with the popularity, but his rating's around 70%. So
even in Baltimore, we were pointing that out. We actually spoke with him right before Christmas. And
government keeps rolling on regardless.
The one thing I think is sort of an unusual dichotomy that you're seeing is that if on the federal level right now, we've just elected a Republican president who has just absolutely dismal approval ratings, perhaps the most unpopular, and you've heard it said it's the most unpopular president we've elected in certainly modern times, which was a total surprise to the electorate. On the state level, we've got a Republican governor in a Democratic state, which has incredibly high approval ratings, both among Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all across the board, who was a surprise win to the electorate. you look down on the city level in Annapolis, and you've got Mayor Pantelides, who was a Republican and primarily a Democratic city, that, again, surprised the electorate with a 59-vote win against a incumbent mayor that was doing a very decent job, except he picked the wrong battle to fight at the end.
Which was not the wrong battle to pick. It was just it happened to be the wrong person.
It was the unpopular. It was on the unpopular battle to pick, and there was.
I've observed this same phenomenon in Maryland, in Annapolis. Now, you look back to Governor Glenn Denning. Mm-hmm. Governor Glenn Denning, when at the end of his term of office, he tried to get his lieutenant governor elected. She was not a good candidate.
No, right.
And we got Bob Ehrlich. So one term he was out. We got O'Malley. At the end of his term, he tried to get his lieutenant governor elected. Bad candidate.
There's a moral to the story.
Either they're bad candidates or lieutenant governors can't get elected.
And well, I think the former, not the latter. Anyway, we got Larry Hogan. And then you look at the national level. Obama was going to, I think Hillary had been anointed. She was going to be the candidate. Was not a particularly good candidate. And we got Trump.
Yeah.
I think, and I've talked with some of my colleagues here in the Democratic Party, that the Democrats have stopped listening to the people. And that's something that we as a party are going to have to fix. Well,
you come from West Virginia, and you come from the very people who really spoke out in this election. You know, and I think, I don't know if I was talking to you about this, John, but it was, for all the people who are criticizing the Trump supporters, there is some truth to the coastal elite, where people aren't going in the interior. I mean, they're not going to West Virginia, West Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and these areas that are economically depressed, and realize the desperation that these people have, and they just need any change. So to sneer at them, saying that they're stupid and uninformed, until you think you live their lives, and you grew up around that. I mean, you can attest to.
Well, when Hillary said, "I'm going to put coal miners and mines out of work," that's the Democratic mantra. Coal's bad because coal makes carbon, and that's a hell of a message to send to West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, and Eastern Kentucky, those coal-producing areas.
Which were decimated in the 70s anyway.
And they were, when I was growing up, West Virginia was a Democratic state. You had to be a Democrat to get elected, but that's all changed now. So
right, this is interesting, but. You talked about, you mentioned in the Capitol did an article when you first said you were going to be running for mayor of Annapolis, how the city has been mismanaged. Where specifically do you find, I've got my ideas, I'm just kind of curious.
Well, let me give you a current idea. The flag at City Dock was ripped and torn, and, somebody in the city should have caught that.
That's a no-brainer. You pass by that 100 times a day.
It's a no-brainer, but I'm not sure the mayor passed by it, and I'm not sure he's out and about. I hear he's not seen often. The flag's a sacred symbol of our nation. I've seen it on the caskets of too many of my friends. So anyway, somebody brought it to the attention, and the city fixed it.
Well, yeah, the Capitol did a piece on that yesterday too.
Yeah, have you walked up Main Street lately?
Yeah, we were just talking about that before you came in. Especially during the rain yesterday. There was two ruts there was a river going down Main Street and two ruts.
Well, it needs to be fixed. And I'm not sure that's been managed very well from City Hall.
Well, from my point of view, I think the mayor is, he's got a war chest, as I'm sure you probably have a little bit more than Gavin Buckley does at this point. Well, I'm just saying. You've carried over. But the mayor, I thought. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said Mike Pantelides probably had a shoe-in because he strictly hasn't screwed up. There's been nothing that he has turned around and screwed up. Josh picked that fight with 110 compromise. It was the wrong fight to pick in Crystal Spring. But Mike has booted Crystal Springs down. Now there's a new...
By the way, and I got to say that again, in retrospect, it was the wrong fight to pick. But at the time,
it was the right fight, but it was the wrong time. But again, but now I'm sitting here looking, and I've heard Gavin Buckley talk about, he's got a very pro-business. He's got very pro-arts, which I think are very vibrant things that we do need in this city. I think I've been an advocate for businesses in the city for years and years, and that it needs to get robust. I mean, you've been a resident of the city for decades.
Over 40 years.
A representative of the city for...
And I live downtown. I mean, in the heart of the historic district.
Right. You hold court every morning
at the coffee shop.
in City Dock Coffee. I mean, what are you hearing from your... the people that you're talking to every morning?
I listened this morning to what Gavin had to say at his kickoff party. And one of the things he said, we don't need any more T-shirt shops or, those kinds of things. We need things that will attract people. Well, part of the problem we have is we don't have as many residents downtown as we used to have. And one of the things that I would propose, and I did this a couple years ago with the city, a low interest revolving fund, a loan fund that would allow building owners in downtown to sprinkle their buildings. There used to be apartments over all those stores downtown, and then the fire marshal came in and said, "Can't have residents here if you're not sprinkled." And the building owner said, "Well, we're not going to pay to get this sprinkled." So we need to have more people that actually live downtown and need those services, like Brookie's Market that used to be downtown.
True, Stevens Hardware.
And Stevens Hardware. But if you don't have residents that can walk...
There's no need for it. Hence the need for another T-shirt
Also,
shop.
I think, and this is where you get a delicate balance. When you think of Ward 1, you think of well-heeled people who live in Murray Hill and Nob Hill, but you're not thinking about the people working the bars or working the restaurants, and those are the people who would live downtown. I think that's the mix we're missing.
Well,
because the people, and let's be honest, the people who live in Ward 1 aren't really that fond of the businesses that are there because they're a lot. I'm stereotyping, but they see it as a
tourist trap.
Well, not just that, but also it's loud and it's noisy and you get the drinks coming out.
I'm going to divide Ward 1 by Duke of Gloucester Street. And I live on the east side of Duke of Gloucester. That's where all the bars and restaurants are. I live as close to
your ground zero as far as the bars go.
As anybody's concerned. And it hasn't been a problem for us.
I've talked to several Ward 1 people. They always say that, there's people, crapping in their front yard and stealing their stuff and whatnot. And you hear that anecdotally, but then when you talk to them, it's like, well, I was talking to Ellie Tierney, who owns the Chez Ami, and she says, every now and then we'll get a pillow stolen off of our bench out front, but, that's kind of it. And maybe there's a loud couple going up the street laughing and giggling at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you just sort of get used to it, but you're living in a city.
Yeah. So I haven't had anybody do anything like that on my front porch or on the sidewalk in front of my house. So, and there are people, and we used to sleep with the windows open until my wife made me get air conditioning. She said the summer was just too hot to sleep in there.
It is Maryland, yeah.
And I said, well, it builds character, and she wasn't buying character. So, but part of what is done in downtown, the tax on the alcohol, the tax on sales, we get a little bit of that back. Although I just got an email from the former mayor, Moyer, who says we're not getting enough. It goes to the state, county, doesn't come back to the city. Well, that's something for another day.
Yeah, we've talked about this a few times, that really the only revenue the city gets is from property tax and from fees. So, and we always said that, because we've gone on about the way the businesses have been kind of neglected by for a long time, is that because it doesn't matter if a business is thriving or not, because as long as the property taxes are being paid on a building, the city really doesn't have a dog in the fight as far as a business succeeding.
Well, they should. I mean, they should have a dog in the fight. I mean, because you want a vibrant downtown community. One of the things that I think needs to be changed is the permitting process within the cities.
Absolutely.
It's got to be dealt with. And that's something that
we hear time and time again. We've heard that it's just
that's the
so
biggest
difficult.
complaint.
The businesses, they come, they look, and they leave. I spoke with the general contractor of Morton's when they were here, and he said he built 60 of them worldwide. He says he's never met a more dysfunctional city.
I heard the same thing when they opened that Hell Point Seafood. They said that they've opened restaurants all over the East Coast, and they said that they've never had the obstructionism.
And what happens, because I ran into this, I actually had a restaurant at the Annapolis Mall back in 83. You're trying to get your business started. You got your startup capital, And then the permitting process drags on, and then pretty soon you're ready to open, and you've used up your operating capital.
Right. And it's not Manhattan. This is a small town. It should be.
Great Paws is a good example. They used to be out in West Annapolis. They moved over to the Eastport Shopping Center because their business was booming. They were expanding. The city had some kind of crazy water thing because of the water, so they needed to get a new water main or something there. And it ended up, what they thought was going to be $25,000 ended up being $125,000. Ended up getting their capital to expand and everything else. They didn't get open. They lasted 3 months. They closed, and I just saw a foreclosure notice on their, or not a foreclosure, but a rent thing on there that they're behind on the rent for. So they've skipped out and closed, which is, I mean, obviously that's something the business probably needs to do. But
if I were the mayor, see, I would use the Marine Corps model. Every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, there'd be a department head meeting where I would go around the table and say, what do you got going this week? And do you need any assistance from anybody else in any of the other departments? And the same with everybody around the table. And then the next Monday, what did you get done what you said you were going to get done? I don't think there's any accountability to any of the department heads. They're sort of operating on their own. Now, they're good people, but, even good people from time to time need some direction.
Well, there's a sense of complacency, for sure.
Well, there's also bureaucracy in place that is way too big for a town this small.
Well, and that's another thing I would tackle.
Do you think, you're perceived as, part of the establishment, if you will. You're not...
Well, that's what Gavin says. I'm part of the establishment.
Mayor Pantelides was 30 when he started. He was like, do you think your age or your establishment entrenchment is a pro, a con? Will it be a problem?
There are going to be some people that aren't going to vote for me because they think,
sure,
I'm part of the establishment. I remember this was, 3 elections ago. I was running against this young guy, and at one of the candidate forums, he stood up and he said, Senator Astle is simply too old and too tired for this job. And I was watching the audience, and there were more people over 50 than there were under 30, and that remark just didn't carry. But look, I still run the Annapolis 10-mile race. I've got my vitality, and right. I got white hair. Of course, you do too.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean we're old, because I think that's a state of mind. If you allow yourself to think you're old. So, I've been in office for a long time, and some people would say I'm part of the establishment. But I understand that you're successful if you listen. I don't have all the ideas, but I know how to listen, and I know how to get things done.
Well, also there's also the advantage to that is that you understand how budgetary processes work, and looking at Annapolis, I think the budget this year is $103 million.
I think it's $110 million.
Yeah.
Is it that much?
I think the episode.
Well, no. So that's the next budget. So last year was 103. So now it's 110. So it's gone up like $3 million per year for the last.
Here's something that a lot of people don't, I think, realize. That we have a weak mayor, strong council form of city government.
Sure.
So the mayor is really the chairman of the council, and to be really effective, the mayor needs to get 5 votes. Terry Smith that did that tongue-in-cheek article about the mayoral race. Did you see that? Terry Smith.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was in the Capitol.
Oh, about how the variety of candidates makes it enriches the city.
Yeah, it would make an interesting race. But he told me that one of the things that Pantelides said to him was his hardest job is getting 5 votes. Well, I've spoken with the council members along the way, and even just recently. He doesn't speak to the council members. I've chaired committees. If you want
I've heard that as well. That he's very distant.
If you want to be successful as a chairman, you got to talk to the members of the committee, and make sure that
build a coalition.
Build a coalition. Get your votes. When I was the chairman of the House delegation, I never put a bill up for a vote until I knew where all the votes were.
Right. It was a done deal.
Yeah, but to get those, I had to work the committee. I worked the delegation, talk to people face to face. See what their concerns were, and then, maybe we can amend this to take care of your concerns.
Well, you certainly didn't do, 30 some odd years in the legislature by not talking to people. I guess that's sort of a given there.
Life's about relationships. That's the bottom line.
So, what does your candidacy look like moving forward?
Well, right now I've got a couple issues that I got to resolve because I'm in the Senate, and I'm working on that. I have not yet filed.
You've got till July for that. I mean, you can finish this session of this.
I can finish the session, but I'd like to get on the street before then. But,
right.
So I get these issues worked out. One of the things I want to do a poll, because I want to see what people really think about the issues and what are the issues, and then based on that, you put together a platform that will address those issues. And I will tell you this, maybe I'm wrong, but part of being successful in this game is personality.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I have said for a long time that running for mayor of Annapolis or council is more of a beauty contest, not necessarily on beauty, but I mean, than anything else.
That's why John hasn't run for anything.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, it's getting out there. It's a personality. It's, being approachable, and whatnot, as opposed to a standoff. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And you got to get out and knock on doors. I mean, in the 14 election, I was out knocking on doors all over South County. You can't be afraid to roll up your sleeves.
And you're going to hear it.
And arguably, that's why Mike won. One of the big reasons. But I mean, he did work the doors, and he was in all the neighborhoods last time.
I remember you say you don't always get a good response. I was down in South County knocking doors, and I see this guy underneath a pickup truck. And he had an NRA sticker, and I thought, yeah, this is my kind of guy here. So I went over and I leaned down and said, hey. So he's on those, what they call them, those little roller things.
The dolly,
you
creeper.
Yeah. So he comes out, he said, what do you want? I said, well, I'm John Astle, and I'm running for the Senate of Maryland. He said, are you a Democrat or Republican? I said, well, I'm a life member of the NRA. I didn't ask you that. Are you a Democrat or Republican? I said, well, I'm a Democrat. He said, well, you get your stuff and get off my property. So I said to myself, well, I guess I'm not getting that vote.
So you ran into my father-in-law, did you?
You knew exactly where he stood. Do you think City Hall's going to have enough room for all of your deadheads?
They're gone. The deadheads are residing in Western Maryland now.
Are they?
Yep.
Are you still hunting?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm probably not ever going to go back to Africa again. But I was on the Eastern Shore this year, opening a deer season. I got two. I got one processed, and the other I donated to Feed the Hungry, to that program where they process it and then donate it to the food bank.
What's in Western Maryland? Do you have a property out there?
Yeah, I got some property out there.
Up Deep Creek or?
Pardon?
Up Deep Creek?
North. No, I'm not on the lake. I'm in the woods.
In Garrett County, though?
Yep, 15 miles north of. I'm a mile and a half from Pennsylvania and 2 miles from West Virginia.
Friendship or?
Friendsville. I'm north of Friendsville.
That's Garrett. We had a place at Deep Creek for years and years, and that's when Oakland used to be. And if no one has ever been to Oakland, it is like Mayberry. Right? Yeah. Although now it's gotten kind of. It's kind of built up a little bit. It's been
kind of discovered, but my wife and I were sitting back. I think it was in September or whenever it was that the blackberries were, and she had been picking some blackberries and the day before. So we're sitting on the porch having a cocktail, and all of a sudden I look up. There's a bear. So there was a bear eating the same blackberries where she'd been picking.
They're like pigeons up there. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
That's when we go. You'd have to drop off your trash. They wouldn't pick it up, and you'd go to the dump, and like the lights would come on. And it was just bears everywhere. It was phenomenal.
So that's my getaway. I can get out to the mountains where on the little road that we get our house is on. If we see 6 cars in a day, that's heavy traffic.
Makes it easy to fix.
And if you talk about the infrastructure, we used to go to Deep Creek back in the 80s when it was a backwater. The only people who went there were from Pittsburgh. And you had to take 40 up there through Flintstone.
Yeah.
And then they built 68. And actually, that gap on 68, right past Hancock, we were the first car through there.
Is that right?
Yep, we got there right when they cut the tape and they waved us through.
No, that's one of my favorite. You come out 68. You come up through that cut, and then all of a sudden it just opens up to Western Maryland. It's pretty incredible.
It is. It's beautiful. I've been out there a couple times with my girlfriend through that pass heading out to.
You drive around the lake. I mean, $1 million homes, multi-million-dollar.
And when
homes.
I was growing up, I sound like the old guy here. But there wasn't all that there. It wasn't as she is now. But I mean, it's really built up. I mean, people from Maryland discovered it. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful, but it's still a big Pittsburgh.
Right.
Getaway. But,
well, you can't You can't get Baltimore television out there.
No, it's all Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's essentially part of Pittsburgh up there.
And then I guess the folks were really disappointed the Steelers lost last night. So
yeah,
that's glorious.
For sure. That was a tough game, man.
It wasn't a tough game.
I don't follow that football, basketball, baseball.
Well, I'll tell you, thank you very much for your time. I don't want to take any more. I know we've had about a half hour. We've sort of overstayed your welcome. Real quick, do you think Governor Hogan's got a second term ahead of him?
Looking at the numbers now, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't see a Democrat that's got that sort of strength out.
I've not seen anybody on the horizon there. Thought I've seen.
I know there are a couple of county executives now that would like to run when the time comes, but.
And what about your Senate seat? If you're successful in running for mayor, that would be an appointed position, right?
Be appointed. Yeah, the Central Committee would make a recommendation. The governor,
right, and obviously under input with you. I'm hearing Sarah Elfreth. Is that?
No, Sarah, she has another vision for herself, and I've talked to her.
Yeah.
I talked to her about it, but she's looking in another
direction. I know she's looking at county council.
But she's someone to watch, too.
Yeah, she's been working really hard. One of the problems that I think she would have in a Senate election, we got A and B. A is Annapolis. She'd probably win Annapolis. B, she probably couldn't. I couldn't win B after being, I was 32 years in office when I ran in 14, and I lost every precinct in Senate B. Just it's a tough place.
Right.
So. It's
interesting. Who's the up and comer in the whole area Democratic Party? Would you think? Who do we need to keep our eye on?
I'd say Sarah. I mean, the people that I've been watching here, she's one of the best. I mean, she's working hard. She's got a vision. She's bright, but she knows that she's got to do the groundwork, and she's been doing that. President of the District 30 Democratic Club. She got herself as a vice president of the Ward 1 Residents Association.
Right.
She's just done a lot of those things that put her on the skyline, and she's done a good job.
Is your former opponent, Don Quinn, involved at all?
I saw him yesterday at the march. I was one of the speakers at the march yesterday. Don came up to me and asked him how he was doing and what he was doing. He said he's in law school.
Oh,
and he's looking, maybe would like to run in 2020.
Okay.
Of course, regardless of what happens, I won't be in office in 2020. I can tell you.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for your time. We'll let you get back to the session today.
The work of the people.
Right.
The work of the people. There you go.
And we'll go grab lunch.
What's that?
We're not going to do any work of the people. We'll just grab lunch.
No, we're going to chicken roost. I heard Ted Levitt just put up a sign for Trump and Pence for the sandwiches.
On a sandwich?
On a sandwich board. But he did not have one for Obama and Biden.
Oh, really? What's the sandwich?
I don't know. I got to go see.
Bologna.
My first sandwich was a hot dog wrapped in bologna. I mean, what a sandwich for a politician.
Now, was that something that you actually enjoyed?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of neat. And now my sandwich is a hot roast beef, open-faced hot roast beef with French fries.
I think I've had that before.
And gravy. Something I'd have gotten in West Virginia.
That's true. Well, thank you very, very much. Have a great day. I appreciate it. And we will talk with you soon.
All right. Well, thanks, Senator.
I enjoyed it. Thanks.
In 2015, Anne Arundel Medical Center had to transfer more than 1,100 mental health patients to a mental health facility outside of this area for care because the facilities they needed do not exist in our own community. These patients and families are our friends, loved ones, and co-workers, and they deserve better. Join Anne Arundel Medical Center and presenting sponsor M&T Bank on Saturday, April 29th in Annapolis at AAMC's Denim and Diamonds Bash. Denim and Diamonds is a wonderful evening under the stars, featuring fabulous cuisine, gourmet food trucks, silent auction, and dancing, all to support expanding mental health care in our community. It's an evening of great fun, but it's not just a party. For tickets and sponsorship, visit aamcdenimanddiamonds.org.
Well, there you go. different perspective.
He's intimidating a little bit. I tower over him. I'm like a foot taller, and he still kind of spooks me a little. That's a military presence.
When you got a 72-year-old guy that's in much better shape than you.
I know.
They can kick your ass.
He can kick my ass. Yeah, he could actually.
But he
was talking about how he does that 10-miler. I'm like, I get tired after driving 10 miles. There's no way.
Yeah. Well, I love that one story. He says, he said I had the right attitude, just the wrong pay grade. But one thing that really sort of came across to me with speaking with the senator was that, as you mentioned going into this, that he's not necessarily the establishment.
It's hard. It's funny.
As occupying. I mean, I love the idea of him sitting down on Monday morning and saying, okay, what are you going to do? What do you need?
Well, I lived that life for 10 years where I worked for someone that we had meetings once a week. And it was that thing where you sat around and he pointed at department heads and said, where are you? What do you have going on? And then where were you? Where are you compared to what you said you had last week? And I'm telling you, when you were in the hot seat, this is genuine. I dreaded those meetings, but looking back, they were so important to the health of the company. And that's the reason our company got where they were, is because there was accountability. And there's one thing that when, he's pointing at you and saying, why didn't you get this done? And you have everyone staring at you, just like glad they're not you. You didn't want to be in that position again. And then trust me, that's something if he brings that, and I'm sure, we were actually waiting in his office for him to come join us, and I heard him kind of barking out the staff. I mean, right. Not unkindly, but there was I was a little intimidated.
You know exactly who was in charge and what it was. And I think a very important point that he made too is that the current mayor really hasn't gone very far. He doesn't have the consensus of the council, and how he's a weak mayor, and that's not to him personally. It's just the way the system is structured. And with a weak mayor, you've got to have the consensus of the council to get anything done. And Mike Pantelides has said that to the Capitol and any number of people times. Says, it's going to be tough to get the 5 votes. How many times have we talked to Alderman Littman who said, I don't have the 5 votes. You just, you need those.
Right.
I said, I think Senator Astle has, had years and years, decades of getting those votes in the House of Delegates and the Senate.
I think it's sort of like when you sit down, when you talk about developers and you say that with a capital D, and you're like, the developers who come in, and you picture like these guys sitting in a conference room with cigars and kind of laughing and cackling. Yeah. But then you meet someone who's like, you're like, oh, you're actually a pretty nice guy. You're just a regular guy. And I feel that same when you talk about the establishment. You're saying, oh, these career politicians, the establishment. But then you sit down and you're like, actually, you're a nice guy and you're pretty sharp. I think it's easier to talk about these people in the abstract until you get to talk to them one-on-one. And, where I think the mayor would say, well, he's part of the establishment, or Gavin would say he's part of the establishment, he's been entrenched. But then you talk to him and say, well, he does know how to get things done. He does understand budgetary processes, and he understands how to write legislation.
There's nothing wrong inherently with the establishment.
No, I mean, I get swept up in that too. Where you talk about career politicians, and I think you do have those cases.
I do think that's going to be his strongest obstacle to overcome, though. I think that you're going to find the young Mayor Pantelides, the younger candidate Buckley, will be hammering that. Hey, here's this old guy that's entrenched in politics.
I guess, but there's a comfort that comes to that when I think Annapolis isn't any worse off than most cities. It's just that when you're here, you think your problems are worse than anyone else. You're like, oh, it's a disaster. And if you step back going, it's not a disaster. And Annapolis is certainly not a disaster by any stretch. But sometimes when you look, especially at the fiscal matters, where you get a little bit worried going, look, our budget keeps growing, keeps getting larger. Our financial obligations aren't going away, and they're actually getting worse in the form of benefits to current and former employees. So when you have someone, you get a little worried, and when you have like these younger people come in, but you see someone like Senator Astle, you feel kind of relieved, going, okay, he understands this. He can bring this under control. Because again, I think he'll bring up some stuff with infrastructure, like we just talked about, and and some other issues that he sees. But I think it's important to realize that we're certainly no worse off than any other city. Our crime's not out of control.
As Chief Pristoop has said, has demonstrated there. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, at least we know it's going to be an interesting election season.
This is going to be fun. I'm really.
We thought we got rid of the election a couple months ago, but no, this will be interesting on the local level by a far stretch.
And we're going to have some pieces going forward with this. So we're going to have some live debates. We're going to bring back the candidates. We're going to be talking to Mayor Pantelides and candidate Pantelides, and we're going to bring Gavin back, and we're hoping to have some live events. So we'll keep you abreast of that.
Right, and we're going to also talk to the aldermen that are running, the people
Absolutely.
that are running, and we're going to be fairly heavy on the Annapolis politics scene this year, since it is the only election, and then look for us to be heavy again the following year when we get the governor's election, the statewide governor election as well.
Right. So anyway, that was Senator Astle. And you can find us at themarylandcrabs.com on the web, and subscribe to us on iTunes and Google Play. Be sure to give us a review and a rating if you're so inclined. Our ratings are, I think we're at like 18 or 20 5-star ratings right now, because we have a lot of relatives apparently. You find us at the Maryland Crabs on Facebook page. We have a Facebook group for the Maryland Crabs. You can find us at MD Crabs Podcast on Twitter. You find John at Ian Annapolis on Twitter, and I'm at Tim Hamilton 47 at Twitter. And
very good, you got them all.
I know. Wait, hold up. And info at themarylandcrabs.com. Boom,
nailed it. Till next week.
I'm not gonna say another word because I'm gonna screw it up. Word.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.